Let's go to James in Arizona. You're on Free Talk Live, James.
Mr. Mark.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of being an antagonist, I became addicted to talk radio, and I've been a talk radio head following what you framed a legitimate military attack. And I have been taken on the public radio thousands of times and been called everything under the sun, from Lionel Show, call me the greatest, to an ex-con man, Congressman J.D. Hayworth, call me a piece of human. Well, I know this is a family radio show, so I won't continue with what he called me. But given your tirade against me yesterday, Mark, I should like you to know that I've never, ever, not even once, ever asked anyone on earth if they heard me on the radio. But I have had numerous friends and associates say, hey, Whit, I heard you on the Diane Rehm show the other day. Or, Whit, I love when you're on the Michael Medved show. Or when I call him as Jim Bob, that was hilarious to all my friends when they run and cross paths with me. They tell me how they couldn't stop laughing. But so numerous, and I've even numerous times been by different radio stations invited me to come in as a guest host. And I've declined every time because they're not willing to pay me. So I won't do that. I won't waste my time. But, Ian, I just
Hold on,
want to
James. We'll let you
about...
get to your point here in a moment. 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. I think he's referring to you suggesting he get his own talk show.
I didn't call that a tirade.
More coming up here in moments. This is Free Talk Live. All right, let's continue here. James is on the line in Arizona. James, you didn't have really enough time to get your thoughts out there, so go ahead.
Actually, I did. On the original point I did, I just wanted to respond to what I call a tirade. You can call it whatever you want, Mark, about your ranting about me after my call was done.
Can I respond to that?
Whoa, hold on, James. Before you go on, just to be clear, this is where you after your call was over, Mark made a comment about how he thinks you should have your own talk show. That seems like, that
wasn't in response to that. I didn't respond to that, actually. I was responding to him saying that I call my friends, and did you hear all the mysteries I've never once mentioned. I don't talk politics to anybody unless they bring up the subject to me, ever. I'm not that type of guy. But I do it on, I am want to do that with people that say a lot of things on public airwaves that I don't agree with, and they call their show Free Talk Live. Talk about whatever you want. So I wanted to mention to you last night that it's just been recently marked the 102nd anniversary of Milton Friedman's birth. And apparently you don't remember me mentioning Free to Choose as being what had certain, using your words, resonance to me as for why I claim to be a libertarian using somebody else's words, Mark. But I should like to say also that Milton Friedman would make fun of his grandson's seasteading idea as much as I did yours, being in communion with it. It's ludicrous.
Well, you don't know what Milton Friedman would make fun of and what he wouldn't. I mean, I don't know whether he'd make fun of his grandsons. I can tell you his son is definitely not. David Friedman, it doesn't seem, seems to think it's a fine idea.
Hold on, before you go on, what is seasteading?
Seasteading is the idea of humans moving out on platforms in the water, essentially moving away from monopolistic city-states and nation-states on the land and attempting to create competition for governance out on the water where they, creating new area because there's no pioneers any longer.
So, James, you are a critic of the seasteading?
Mark, can I ask you a question in response to that question? Because it will frame this whole notion I have about your guest, your business partner. Do you not remember talking about this only a month ago, and you had like an entire show talking about it with Ian? And since he seems to have some kind of memory loss about that, what would you think would be the cause of that?
James, I'm going to put you on hold for a moment here while I explain radio to you. There are always new listeners when you're broadcasting on the radio, not only because we have new radio stations coming on at all times, but
people
also
are turning on their car radios at all different times.
Right. Anybody can be tuning in at any time. So it's not that I don't know. When I ask Mark what is seasteading, it's not that I don't know what seasteading is. That's me stopping the conversation as trying to put myself in the shoes of a listener who may not have ever heard this show before and try to explain better for them what we're talking about. In the same way that if somebody lets off with some three-letter acronym like the NAP, I'll almost always stop down. If I notice it, I'll say, whoa, you mean the non-aggression principle, and maybe even give a brief explanation of what that means. So, James, I'm well aware of what seasteading is, but many of them in our audience may not have had that information. So go ahead.
Well, I'm deeply sorry that accused you of smoking too much, and that forgive me for suggesting otherwise.
You're forgiven. Go ahead.
My point is, I believe Milton Friedman certainly would make fun of that idea, just like I was able to destroy the idea as to who are you going to call. You never did answer that question. If little Vladimir Putin rises out of let's say you're floating around the Black Sea and he pulls up on you.
I would be concerned with Vladimir Putin if I was floating around the Black Sea. But if I was in the Gulf of Mexico, it'd be the United States that I'd be worried about.
Right. You call the United States because the United States. Oh, whatever. Okay. So you said.
By the way, James, we agree on this one.
Ian. Right. Ian, yeah. Okay. Good. Cool. Wow. What's for once? But I wanted to say. You said, well, Basquiat and you couldn't remember who else, but it was Milton Friedman. But where do you believe in the principles of liberty? Where? Because I never did get to answer that question, nor do I know what you were talking about, because, of course, you posed it after my call was done. So for the benefit of the audience and me, what do you mean when you say that I'm not a libertarian and I don't believe in the principles of liberty? And don't talk about the war thing, because the non-aggression principle is your libertarian principle, not mine, nor is it any other libertarians that I know.
So you're a libertarian who doesn't subscribe to the non-aggression principle is what you're saying.
In the context of war, is what I'm saying. Evil needs to be confronted in this earth, and it is all over the earth right now.
So by definition, you're not a libertarian, right?
Stop. I am a libertarian, and I know that the evildoers in this earth don't respond to stick-ups with pot and flowers, but they do respond to stick-ups with guns and ammo. And this world is overflowing with people that want you dead.
As far as I'm concerned, everybody listening can make up their own mind. I'm putting you on hold again. As far as I'm concerned, anybody listening can make up their own mind. To me, a libertarian is someone who embraces the non-aggression principle across the board without exception. But Mark, I think he was asking you, so go ahead with your answer.
Well, I would. To me, what's important is as far as it is that the non-aggression principle is you don't use force, fraud, or theft. You don't initiate. You don't attack somebody to get what you want. You don't initiate force, fraud, or theft in order to get what you want, and that means most of the wars in U.S. history are. It's not appropriate to have responded in that way. So, like, for instance, when the United States puts an embargo on Japan for oil, the United States is initiating force on U.S. business people that say they can't deal with Japan.
James, you're back on. Go ahead.
I agree with everything you said, Mark, up until the point you talked about the United States issuing an oil embargo around what I've repeatedly had to remind you and your audience, obviously, in the context of the early 1940s, that the Japan was literally an evil empire. They were genocidal, mass murdering, raping, and pillaging in China. And if you think that it's a violation of free market principles not to sell oil to a mass murdering total war state that...
Well, if you don't want to sell oil to them, you shouldn't sell oil to them. But to have the government come in and force people to stop selling oil is the use of force. That's initiation of force against those businesses. Thanks, James. More coming up.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.